All right, guys, so for today's video, we're going to look at different variations of angle 1. So there are countless of different FMA systems out there, whether it's Balintawak, whether it's Anastacio, Bias Tres Manos, Doce Pares, whatever it might be. And everyone seems to have a little bit of different counts, whether it's 5 counts, 10 counts, 8 count, or in our case, 10 count for the basic strikes. But everybody seems to have the same universal angle 1. So for those that don't know, angle 1 is a strike that goes from top right down to bottom left. It is a linear diagonal slash. So angle 1 is kind of the thing that everyone references from the beginning of how to strike, from the beginning of many different flow drills, and even a lot of entries when you look at disarming or taking somebody down. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you our variations of angle 1. Now, there are plenty of different variations, and it's something very specific that we want to understand here. The difference between a variation and a different angle, right? So you have your angle 1, and then, for example, you have an angle 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So those are all different strikes themselves, which can be modified to suit your needs. So when we talk about a variation, we'll be using an angle 1 in 5 different ways. And all of these are going to have something very similar to an angle 1, or you can see the essence of an angle 1 being developed or used here. So when we look at the first variation of an angle 1, it's just like everyone thinks it's going to be. It's what we call a slash. So a slash, by definition, is a strike that either cuts through the target, or it's a strike that starts on one side and finishes on the other. So in this case, my angle 1 is what we consider a forehand strike. And it goes from my open position, or my forehand side, cutting through to my backhand position, or what we call the closed position. Okay, so when we look at the slash, it's typically done from a medium range. However, you can do it from long range or close range. We'll look at those range in particular with a different variation. But what I want to get to for number 2 is our snap. So our snap, if we take that same angle 1 template, if we start from the forehand position, we're going to hit the target, and a snap is a strike by definition that hits the target and returns to the point of origin, or simply it goes back to where it came, right? So if you see from the side, the difference in the mechanic between a slash and a slash, I'll drive my shoulder and hip through and finish all the way with a big swing, versus a snap, I'm almost going to punch it out, still using my hip and shoulder. So it's very important that I load these hips here. And when I punch it through, I need to use just as much power to pull it back and reload the hip. A very striking mechanic if you guys do any kickboxing or Muay Thai. So when I do a snap, it's back. Okay, so same thing with the snap, just like the slash, it is typically done from medium range. However, it can be done from close range. Very rarely would you do it from long range because you have all of that space and freedom to swing. It's not really that important for you to pull back in terms of timing. So medium to close range is typically where you find the snap variation. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to get into the close range angle 1. So in this case right now, I'm going to use a slash. There are different ways we can do this. But as I slash through, it's almost like I'm going to bang the drum. So I almost make like a V pattern, or a V motion, I should say. And what I'm doing is I'm going to hit with still the slashing point of my stick, but I'm going to force it to finish by pulling it back and almost bounce this into a high close position like you see here. So it's almost a blend between the slash and the snap because it's not as fluid as a regular angle 1 would be. It has that kind of choppiness that a snap would, but the difference is I am following through where I'm going to the opposite side. Okay, so if we look at the difference from a side profile, this is your angle 1 slash, this is your angle 1 snap, and this is your angle 1 slash close range. All right, now things get a little bit more complicated. So this fourth variation that we're going to look at is what we call a trapilon, or this is what we consider a twisting strike. So one of the categories of striking that we come across once we pass the kind of beginner level of slashes and snaps are what we call witik or whipping strikes. So a lot of popular witik strikes are things like an abanico. This is what we call an arco strike. You can hear the wrist flexors really being used here, and you get that kind of whipping sensation. So what a forehand trapilon is, it's an angle 1 where about halfway I create the whipping motion by rotating my wrist, and I come back to that same angle 1 line, and I finish just like I would with the angle 1 slash. Okay, so if we look at it from a side profile here, I start my angle 1, I'm going to point it to the left, comes back around to the right, and I finish my angle 1. Okay, when you put it together with power, it should be something like this. And you can hear the snap and kind of the pause behind it. Okay, it still has an element of the slash where I'm driving through to the closed position. But what that allows me to do is it allows me to get 2 strikes in 1, or it allows me to break the timing of my angle 1. So either I'm going to hit someone's stick out of the way, come back around without having to follow through, then I can go for a clean cut. Okay, or I'm coming through, diversion, and finish the strike. All right, so variation number 5, this is where we're going to use the puño, or the hooking point of our stick. So in particular to our hand grip, we have it about 1 hand grip from the bottom, gives us this allowance here from our stick. Okay, and when we go close range using the puño, or the hooking section, there are 2 ways we can do it. Okay, you can use the butt of the stick and use it more as a snap, and this would be considered a close range angle 1. Or you can do it as more of a hooking motion, almost like you're throwing a boxer's hook. And we're still going to follow the angle 1 template, which is top right down to bottom left. But again, I'm using that close range section, or the hooking point itself. So I'm going to drive through with my hips and shoulders just like I would in the close range angle 1 slash, but this time I'm using the lower part of my stick here. So when we do that, we want to make sure it's either hips loaded, shoulder through, pulling it back, reloading the hips, or stick is pointing down, and we're almost going to stomp through and get a nice big hooking motion, following through just like we would with an angle 1 slash. All right, so those are the 5 angle 1 variations. There are a lot more that we can do here. There are things like long range, there are things like low line, high line, a lot of fundamentals that we apply. And it's something that I teach all my students, that it's not about the amount of angles you know, okay? It's about the amount of variations you can do within that angle. Personally, if I had to memorize 100 angles, I can't tell the difference between 56 and 66. But if I categorize them in my brain as, well, these are all angle 1s, then I can take things that are similar and help me remind myself that it's still an angle 1, but this time it's in long range, it's in close range, it's a whipping strike, it's a snapping strike, it's a slash, and that's how I'm able to utilize all the variations that I can practice here on the mats. So try that out at home. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you guys subscribe if you're new to the channel. If you guys have been rocking with me since the very beginning, thank you so much for supporting the channel. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and make sure you guys stay tuned for the next one.